Mouse One here, and today I'm bringing you a paper mache video. It's been ages since I've done one of these, so I thought it was high time that I made another one. I'm going to be making a model of Yuri from the game Doki Doki Literature Club. This will be a two-part series. I'm going to model her in this episode and then paint her in the next episode. So that's something to look forward to. The paper mache mixture I'm using is flour, water, and a little bit of salt. The salt just stops it from mold from growing. So yeah, I always add that. So I just smush it together with paper, and you want to work it for as long as until you get a really smooth consistency. So yeah, I just spent ages going back and forth, just massaging it between my fingers and rolling it into a ball. Roll it into a ball and then smush it. That helps a lot. Yeah, it's just keep working it, breaking it apart until it becomes a nice clay-like consistency. As you can see, I then mold this into Yuri's head. Yuri's my favourite Doki Doki character. I just find her the most relatable of the four Doki Doki girls. Not sure if that's a good thing or not, but yeah. I roll it a ball, and then I use my thumb and forefinger to massage it into the head shape that I'm looking for here. And then I use smaller parts of paper mache to do first the nose, do Yuri's nose. When you blend pieces of paper mache together, you want to first just add the two shapes, and then you want to use a tool or your finger just to rub them together until you get the very consistent blend between the two pieces. I'm going to be using this wooden clay sculpting tool mainly for this, and then just use my fingers to do the rest of the job. So yeah, I just keep working this until it looks good. And paper mache is very much a process of doing something. You might have to do a process multiple times because things get smushed as you manipulate it. But it is a very forgiving process. So yeah, it's just a bit of a trial and error process. And often it's very slow, but I find it very fun. It's also a very messy process. So if you try this, be prepared. Your hands are gonna feel disgusting. You can see I've only just started, and look how messy my fingers already are. I mean, seriously, it's ridiculous. I here add on an ear for Yuri, which is kind of important since her ears come through her hair. I do have to redo the ears after I do the hair, but it helps with placement. When you're looking at proportions of a character, the more stuff you have on there faster, the easier it is to start working out what goes where when, sort of thing. So yeah, I'm sorry I'm completely out of frame, but yeah, I just start sculpting stuff out. Here I'm making some more paper mache, just workable clay. Clay's not really the right word, but it's just, yeah, I'm just making it workable. We won't linger long on this. This is what I'm going to use for the torso of Yuri. As you can see, I just make basically a rectangle and then curve said rectangle into the appropriate shape. So yeah, I then just start using more clay to just build up the forms, the general forms of the thing. With paper mache, I like to get basic shapes in first, and then I can work on larger shapes later. So yeah, I just use paper mache to start building up. It's a bit of a back and forth process. You might add a bit on, then you realise it's a bit excessive, so you take it off again. And you just have to keep working it over and over again until everything looks good, which can be a bit of a process. Here I'm doing Yuri's chest, which is very exaggerated in the game. I mean, it's a dating sim, so obviously. But yeah, I do this just to try and make it just add in the general form of her chest. Most of this won't be visible in the end because of the way I position her arms, but it helps to have these sort of things in here just to help work out where other stuff's supposed to go. It's like, if you like move your mouth, for example, the form around your eyes will move as well. Like if you smile, then your cheeks push up. If you frown, then your cheeks relax, sort of thing. Like every part of an area of the body will affect other parts of the same area, sort of like the surrounding parts. So yeah, just getting as much form as possible. It helps to establish what we're looking at very quickly, so you can work out where other stuff is meant to go, even if you won't see much of it in the end. Not to mention the fact it's not always obvious what you'll be able to see in the end. Like, I genuinely thought that there'd be more of the torso visible in the end, but it's not much in reality. So yeah, I just start building up like the abdomen as well to make that look more natural. This is a slightly more complex figure than I've made in previous paper mache videos, but I found it so enjoyable to do. Here I'm making this little book by just taking a rectangular paper mache, then wrapping a strip of paper around it. I'm basing this model of Yuri from the version of her which appears on the home screen of the game, and in that she is holding a red book, so I wanted to mimic that. Also, Yuri always has a book. In the game, she's reading the Portrait of Markov, and she always gets you to read with her, and yeah, it's such an intrinsic part of her character. It makes sense to give her a book to go with that. As you can see, I give her like the top of one of her legs. But here I'm working on the hand that is going to be in front of her face. Yeah, so I just use tiny pieces. Hands are always fiddly. On previous creations, I've honestly just settled on having little blob hands, but here I wanted to do something a bit more complex, so I'd probably try and give it fingers. Hands are difficult just because things get so easily smushed with paper mache, and small delicate details like that often get lost. But yeah, I try and avoid that just by being a bit more careful with it. And a bit of the form is lost, but still, I keep some of it, so it at least looks okay, and it is worth the effort to put that in. I sculpt out a forearm to attach to said hand, and I just blend the two pieces together as much as possible, and it just is really cute. So I take a bit more of the clay, and I'm just going to attach the book to her chest, and then I can sculpt the other arm holding the book a bit easier just by sculpting it directly onto the body. Obviously, limbs which are extending away from the body are going to be more difficult. The face in mine eventually ends up, the hand on mine does end up resting on the face rather than being in front of the face like it is in the actual drawing. Just because obviously, if stuff is touching other forms, it is slightly easier to sculpt out, obviously, because you don't have to worry about gravity so much affecting everything. So yeah, that's how I do that. So I just literally sculpt the hand directly onto the book, and it's just a bit easier that way than doing what I just did, because the fingers will have to form fit around the book. So yeah, that is what how I decide to do that. I then just take some more paper mache and just start sculpting out the arm that is going to be holding the book. I just try and have a nice curve, and then I can accentuate out the bend later. It's just about making sure that. So first I just add on the upper arm, but it's pretty soft curve, honestly, for now. It doesn't have to be super harsh, because it is her just casually holding a book. Yeah, here I try and add the arm like this. Over time you'll find that your mesh will just kind of do what it wants in a way. Gravity will dictate some of the positionings more than what your visioning will. One way to solve this is to allow the pieces individually to dry and then paper mache them together. But in my experience, paper mache doesn't like to adhere to dry paper mache, which is annoying, but that's just the fact of the matter. So I just make out some more paper mache to attach to the other side of. Continue just building out the body, so I add on the other leg, the upper leg. So yeah, I just blend that together using this little tool I have here. Just keep working it, smoothing it out. I use my finger as well. Paper mache is a process you have to be willing to use your hands for. Yeah, a lot can be done with tools, but sometimes you really just need to get in there and just rub your fingers over it. Even if it is really messy, you just have to get used to that. That's just something that is a fact of the matter. So yeah, I just continue to build this out and just keep extending it and just going back and forth, trying to blend stuff out and smooth stuff out. And sorry, I'm out of frame again, there we go. So yeah, I just keep doing this and I just build up on the legs to make them longer and longer. Any long straight piece of geometry is always going to be difficult with paper mache because it's so flimsy and it hates carrying its own weight and it crumbles and cracks. Yeah, any long pieces, expect them to crack later on in the process. You will have to do a lot of repairs on these areas. As of now, I don't know how you avoid that. It will crack. It will decide to be a pain. It just will. And there's no real way to avoid it. I get on to doing the lower leg as well. I just mould that onto the extra piece in the same way that I did the upper leg. By just blending it out with a tool until it looks like it was there all along. My version of Yuri isn't quite as tall in relation to her. Like, I did a bit of it looks kind of like a younger version of Yuri, I guess. She's not as tall or in relation to her thickness. Yuri is quite tall and thin in the game. I just made her a bit shorter in my version. 1, it kind of fits my aesthetic better. 2, it's a lot easier. I add on some shoes, in much the same way, by just getting a piece of paper mache and just building up on the end of the foot and then blending it out as much as possible. So yeah, I will do the same on the other leg so that I have it matching. And then I start just to build up a bit of form for Yuri's hair. Gosh, the hair on this character. It was difficult, but at the same time, it's probably the thing I like most about this character. It is just nice. Guess. It's just really nice and I like it, so. Yeah. I just first just build up the basic shape of the hair with paper mache, which I just in sheets. I just kind of extend it around and down, just to get out the basic shape of the hair, which I can then build up the individual strands onto. So yeah, that's how I do that. I extend it quite far down because Yuri does have very long hair, which made this model pretty difficult to make, but I think it comes out pretty cool. So yeah, that's how that comes out. I also had on a basic form for the skirt. Most of this gets covered over when I redo the flare on the skirt, but for now it just helps just have something there that I can look at and reference and work out visual positionings and all that. Yeah, it just helps to have that shape in place. So yeah, I just go around with a very thin piece of paper, try and give it a bit of volume, and then I just paper mache that on. Nice and easy. Now I take these little triangles or long pieces and I just use them to build out the basic, like a bit more of a complex form of the hair. The hair I did in 3 stages: the initial build up, the detail paperwork, and then I did some strands using wool. But this is step 2, adding in a bit more detail to the form by just like cutting paper into very thin strips and adding on a bit of shape to the hair. And I just continue just to cut this and go all the way around. This is a long process and it looks a bit silly at first, but it does come out quite well, so yeah, I'm glad I did it this way. It's a new method of doing hair. I've never actually done this method before, but I think I will use it in the future because it worked a treat. So yeah, I just continue going over things, and you can kind of see where the legs are cracking slightly. I just kind of like stuff that out. I call this stage the frustration stage because everything decides it wants to break at once as it reaches this stage of the process. It's just where the clay starts, like the mache starts to dry. It doesn't like that. So yeah. Any of these areas I just go over with PVA glue, any of these fragile areas, which helps form a nice seal between the pieces. So yeah. I just go over with PVA, just using my paintbrush. And I also go over the hair because that's going to take a while. While the PVA is drying, I'm going to start working on a base for this character. I'm just going to round the edges of this piece of cardboard. I'm going to try and do it in the pattern of the floor in the club room of the literature club, where they have this kind of crisscrossing wood pattern. Just because it'd be something, it adds a bit of visual interest to the piece. So I just use the cardboard, and where the cardboard edges have holes in them, I just like stuff these with paper mache. It doesn't completely get rid of the holes, but it does help in places, so worth doing. Then I take this piece of paper and just cut around it in like using the base piece as a stencil. Now I'm going to cut this into a little like cross shape, which kind of looks like the like Smash Brothers logo, I guess. But yeah. And then I cut this one into 3 pieces. Basically going like, so this one I do horizontally. And this is going to be the design of the base. And then I just cover this in a layer of paper mache, like a really thick layer. And then I just build that out and cover it with the pieces that I just cut out. And then I just set that aside to dry, and I return to working on Yuri's hair. I add some more pieces in. I kind of try and follow the geometry that shows in the image, but a lot of it just comes down to my discretion, like where things look like they should go. Like if there's a gap, fill it. Basically, where there's a gap, fill the gap. Make sure there's a nice variety and variation. And yeah, just try and make it look as natural as possible, basically. I just add thin strips here and there. I also add a bit of volume by just like keeping some pieces lift up. A lot of the volume's lost in the end, but in some places it's kind of noticeable, so yeah. So I just keep going and adding in more and more pieces all around the base of the original hair form. This took a long time. This model took ages to make. Like, yeah, I've edited it down into like what, a half-an-hour video, but it's upwards of 5 hours of footage. More than. It was a lot. And 5 to 10 hours maybe. It was like, I spent a while on this, and that's the main reason I just split this into a 2-part. I had no time to finish it if I wanted to get this video out for Sunday, so yeah, sorry about that. I have these thinner pieces with some volume, and then I just got over everything with PVA glue to help it solidify. PVA glue just helps with that sort of thing. I now use this needle to etch out the lines between the pavings on the base, like planks of wood, just to make a bit of variation in height and make it clearer the direction of each plank of wood. It helps to build context for what you're looking at here. Where some of the pieces come up, I just paper mache those back down again. Nice and simple. And once again, set that aside. Now I take some wool, I snip it into appropriately lengthed pieces, as so, and then I split it into the individual strands inside of the wool. You could also use like that felt the wool using cross stitch. You could also use that, like embroidery yarn. But this works fine. It's really just about the texture. I'd also recommend using a light colour for this, obviously, because obviously the darker the colour, the harder it is to paint over, and you're just creating a hassle for yourself if you use a dark colour. Which is why I used this nice pastel yellow. And I just kind of glue everything down with PVA. Because of this is kind of a mixed media piece, not necessarily pure paper mache, but hey, it's close enough. So yeah, I then use a thin piece of paper to fold out where I'm going to redo the skirt. I'm going to work out where I want the edges of that to be. I want it to have a bit of volume on this side, like following the line of where the hair lifts up. And I just blend on pieces of paper into where that goes. I use this like felting needle, I think this is, to do so. It's a good tool for the job. So yeah, I just go and blend this on as best I can. And yeah, I then just go all the way around, giving it a bit of volume. I think it looks pretty cool once it's done all the way around. I make up a bit more paper mache, and to stick this onto the base. This paper mache, I tried to make it as gooey as possible by just dipping it in more to the paper mache. I just added more of the liquid. I had some cuffs on the character where her blazer ends. Blazer / t-shirt underneath, essentially. Yeah, I just had some cuffs, basically. No need to overcomplicate this explanation. Just I use thin pieces of paper and use it to make cuffs on her sleeve. I then add some wrinkles to her skirt by just getting these little tapered snakes of paper mache, and then just smush it on and blend it out. And I find this adds a nice bit of variation to it and makes it feel a bit more natural. Obviously, a flared up skirt like this wouldn't be perfectly smooth. So I try to reflect that by building up some material there. I then add some hair underneath the main body of the hair, just to make that blend out better, and I also add some tops to her where her socks would be, and I just work these through. You see I'm holding her down with a pair of scissors. That's just because the mache around her feet, which is holding it to the base, isn't fully dried yet, so I wanted that to be as dry as possible before I released this pressure that's put on it. Pressure is holding it together, basically. Does kind of mean you can't see much because the base has to be on the table. And not to mention I'm out of frame again. That doesn't help, does it? Still, this stage is so much about little details. Like sculpting out little shapes. Sorry if there's a lot of background noise, by the way. I don't know how much of that you can hear. It's just I add more wrinkles to the fold where her elbows fold up, and I just go back and forth. This is the stage where you could probably consider the model done, but I like to go back and forth and try and add as many tiny details as possible, push myself further with every sculpt I make, that sort of thing. Just try and push myself as far as possible, sort of thing. So I just keep going back and forth and just making tiny little tweaks here and there, adding in more material in places, smoothing stuff out, making sure everything is as good looking as possible before it goes to paint. So I just keep adding details, just scratching away in places that need more texture and rubbing over places with more paper mache in areas that I feel need to be smoother, building up more material in places. Just try and make everything as sturdy as possible and as complete looking as possible. It's a lot of tiny little tweaks. And I also do the hem of her blazer with these little triangles. Just going over the skirt like that. It helps, definitely. So I just go through and do it like that. And I go all the way around with pieces just to make the blazer look complete. I think it comes out looking really good. And then I basically glue over everything just to make sure there is as little damage as possible. And it just helps everything dry solidly, especially on the hair where it's not a very paintable surface as wool, but once you've glued over it, it's a lot nicer. Because the base was warping, I glue it to another piece of cardboard and then let that dry completely before I'll have trimmed this down by the next episode. It's a bit more manageable, but for now this works. This is what it looks like. Next episode I will be painting this. I think it looks super cool. I will thank you for watching. Tune next week to see me finish it. Follow me on Instagram at HannahMouseCrafts. Bye.